So it's our second week, and a couple of announcements before we started with new material for today. One is that we have assigned everybody to a section. So if you didn't hear about that, then come talk to me or the CAs after lecture today, because we have assigned everybody to one of our sections, and one of them is this evening. If you're in the Tuesday section, it's in room 380, 380X. So we might be in a different room in the future weeks, but that's where we are for the one tonight. If you're in the one tomorrow, I will have that room figured out later today. So I will contact you and tell you what room that will be. Sorry that it's a little bit last minute. You know how we like to do things at Stanford kind of at the last moment, right? So check on that. If you have any question or concern, or if you can't go to the section that you were assigned to or something like that, come talk to me and the CAs after class and we'll get it all figured out together, okay? That's the main thing. I know there were a few people who couldn't make it to either of the section times that we put up. So I think the CAs and I are talking that one through, but I think for now, you may have to just not go to a section and not have the option then of dropping the homework points. Instead, you'd have to drop the section points for now. I'm talking to the CAs. We might see if we can find an alternate arrangement, but that's the plan for now. Who here has already got Android Studio set up and running on their laptop? Okay, well, if you didn't raise your hand today or tomorrow, that would be a really good time to get cracking on that. Homework 1 is due later this week, and then homework 2 is going to go out after Thursday's lecture as well. In general, most of the assignments will be out longer than a week. This first one was out for just 1 week. That's because it's an individual assignment. It's kind of a pretty chill assignment, and we just wanted to get you guys all started, get your Android Studio set up, and sort of force you to do something so that we could kind of launch into something bigger for homework 2 and onward. Okay, so that's where we are right now. And now I'm going to kind of launch into some new material here. If you look at the calendar for today, we are going to talk more about widgets, and then I'm also going to talk more about lists. And so we'll learn some Kotlin magic as we go along with that, okay? So last time we learned a lot about layout, but I didn't show you very much about some of the different widgets you can use in a layout. So today I'm going to walk through several of them with you. So if I go to my slides for widgets for today, if you click here, you can see those slides. So here are my slides on widgets. Let me make that bigger. There. There's a whole bunch of widgets, and I had to decide which ones to cover, which ones not to cover. I think the idea here is not to be comprehensive. I mean, I think you'll find that this whole class, I just sort of give you a little taste of something and then I move on. I don't cover stuff in exhaustive detail. That can be a little bit unsatisfying sometimes, but I think the idea is that, you can get the idea from looking at a few widgets, and then you can go learn more on your own, or you can learn a different widget on your own. As long as you know the name of the thing, or at least something to Google for, you can usually pick up the rest on your own. Here's a screenshot of several different widgets that are pretty common, and of course if you click each of their names, it'll jump you to the documentation about each one, and so forth. So I think some of the ones you want to use the most are buttons, checkboxes, text editing, images, radio buttons, and text views, along with a few other ones like lists and spinners. But those are kind of the main ones that I think everybody would probably want to interact with. So I'm going to focus somewhat on those today, right? Of course, the nice thing is there's a whole bunch of really rich widgets. Like there's a widget called a web view, which is basically an entire web browser in one widget. So I think this is like cheating. It's like you could make a whole web browser by just dragging and dropping one of these onto your Android app. Like, have you ever used an app that basically has a browser built in? Like on Twitter, when you click a link or something, it pops up the link, you can look at it, but you're still like in the Twitter app, kind of. That's this. They're popping up a web view widget. So that uses some of the guts of like the Chrome or whatever browser that comes with your device, but just in a little widget that can appear on the screen. Anyway, there's lots and lots of neat widgets. There's a map view that's basically like a little Google Maps built. You've seen a lot of apps that have mapping built into them. They're probably using a map view or something similar like that. Anyway, let's look at a few of them. When I talk about widgets, I'm going to mention them in terms of the two different ways that you have to interact with widgets, right? One is that you add some XML to the file that's describing the layout of your activity for your app, right? And then second, you also would probably add some Kotlin code to interact with the widget or handle events that occur on the widget. You have to do both of these. Well, you certainly have to do the XML. for the widget to appear. And then you often will need to do some kind of event handling for the widget to do anything interesting, right? One thing I'll show you a little bit later on in the course is like, technically, you could do everything in Kotlin. You could write the code to create the button and add it to the screen and set the size and the shape of the button. You could do all of that in Kotlin. And in fact, sometimes you want to. But normally you want to just do the XML because they think it's cleaner and simpler and easier. Can you think of a situation where you would want to write code to make buttons and stuff in Kotlin rather than in XML? Why would you want to do that? What do you think?
So if there's some event that happened and a widget pops up?
Like in response to an event, I want a new widget to appear on the screen that wasn't there before. Yeah. Is that what you were going to say? Somebody else thumbs up? Yeah? That's true, but like why don't I just make the widget in the XML but then like make it hidden or something? And then in the event, I'll make it appear, right? Like couldn't I do that the other way? What do you think? Yeah.
Customize it, like extend it, make it different?
You could extend an existing widget. You could write your own widgets or your own code. Yeah. You could also have, you go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, mostly the reason you want to do it is if like at runtime you need to do some really special things with your widgets, like make many of them pop up or something like that, which is pretty rare.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. You said just if you want to do something at runtime involving the widgets that's kind of specific and rare and unexpected. Like the example I like to use is if you don't know how many widgets you're going to need until the app runs. For example, the app loads up, it contacts a web server and says, I want to display all of the pictures of all the users. But you don't know how many users there are until that moment. You don't know how many buttons you're going to need or how many images you're going to need, so you have to create them on the fly. So yeah, there are some cases where you actually do create widgets in Kotlin. I'll show you how to do it later. But in general, for now, this is the model we're going to follow. You declare the widget, you create it and set a lot of its initial state in the XML, and then you interact with it or handle events on it in the Kotlin. We've already seen that pattern before. Okay, so I mean, here's some widgets. And the format of these slides is that I'm going to list in this table some of the most common XML attributes that you might want to set about the widget. And of course, this is a very incomplete list. There's like hundreds of different attributes that you could set. But these are the ones I set most often. And then down here, sometimes I write some of the Kotlin code that you can use to interact with the widget. So like, if you make a button, you almost always want to give it an ID. You can give it an onClick function to call when it gets clicked on. You can set its text to something. There's also a clickable. You can set true or false whether you want it to be clickable. Basically, if it's false, it'll gray out, so you can't press it right now. Maybe you ungray it later on while the app is running in response to some event. Now, actually, some of this code, one of the students pointed out last week that there are multiple different ways to talk to a widget in Kotlin code. There's these Kotlin extensions where you can just refer to the ID of the widget as if it were a variable, and the code will understand that. It's also a concept called data binding or widget binding. And so that's cool, but you can also use this findViewById function to get access to the button and talk to it. Okay, so that's a fairly basic one. Button, we've seen that before. So then there's TextView, and mostly we just set the ID of the text. Now, you might imagine things like, well, I want the text to be left or right or whatever. There are things like alignment properties you can use for a text view. And I would encourage you, like if you don't know how to do some of this stuff, you can just go looking through the properties. I mean, certainly it's fine to Google, like, how do I center the text in Android in a text view? You can also just go to the editor and just start like scrolling through or typing and see what gets suggested by the autocompleter. I kind of want to like break you out of the mindset of like, if it's not on the slides, it doesn't exist, right? I feel like that's the mindset you would have in like 106, right? Like, they showed me how recursion works, and the slides presumably have everything I should need to know. That's less true in later courses, and certainly less true in this course. I mean, there's way more properties that a text view has than like two of these here, right? So, like, and in fact, I mean, I think I might have even said this in the past, that I don't even always memorize the name of some of these things because I just rely, like you should, I rely on the editor to help me. So like if I have an app here we're going to develop, it just has a text view that says hello world. I mean, certainly over here on the side there's all these attributes, and I think there's two different views. There's like this view that has only a few properties that they think are most common. Then there's also some view up here, I think it's this little arrow icon. It says, do you want to view all the attributes? Or I think down here there's a view all attributes link here. And if you click one of those, it shows every single, I mean, look at how many attributes there are. Now, I get a little overwhelmed by this, and it's like if I'm trying to find alignment, I guess I could go up here to A, but I don't see alignment here. So I think actually sometimes rather than scrolling this, I just go over here to the text view. Oh, sorry, that's too small. But here, if I want to set, if this thing here, like let me make it wide. So I'll drag this over to there. I guess it's already attached to both ones, right? So what if I make the width to be match parent? Bless you. So now the text field is really wide, but I want to make the text be, centered or right aligned. Now, there's a couple different ways. There's a lot of different ways you can do stuff in Android, right? Like, one way you could do this would be you could detach the left edge. You could detach the widget from the left edge. Wait, where did that go? Sorry. For the width, I say wrap content. And then if I stop attaching to the left edge, but I am still attached to the right edge, it should like pull me over there, right? So how do I always forget how to like remove the linkage there. Okay, I just clicked the little circle and it removed it. So now I guess technically I'm right aligned here, but there's always more than one way to do things. Like if I am attached to both of them, and then I make this thing really wide and I say I want the width to match the window, it gets really wide, but now it's left aligned. So if I want it to be center aligned or right aligned or something like that, you can often come back in here and type like align text alignment. Oh, okay. I guess that's what that's called. And so I just press enter, and then it's like, what value should it have? I don't know. Well, I could just scroll through the different values and just pick one. Like, how about center? Ta-da, it's in the center. So like, I'm remarkably bad as a reference. If you come ask me what's the name of something, I'll go, I don't know. I start typing letters until it shows me something I want, So the other thing is like, I'm really old and I've been coding for a long time. So, I have done a lot of web development. And web development has names for all these things too, but sometimes it'll be called like font size instead of text size, and it all gets jumbled up in here, I got a kid, I can't remember anything. I don't know where my keys are. So I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to like show you how I code Android and set your expectations for what you should do or what you shouldn't need to know. Like, I will not quiz you and test you or something on whether you memorize the names of all these stupid properties. I don't care about that at all. If you just get a system where you can get stuff working in here, that's all that really matters, And I think that's not just like me being lenient. I think if you went and applied for a job where they wanted you to write Android code, they wouldn't sit there and quiz you if you had memorized all these stupid XML names either, right? Like, they might want to see an example of an app that you had built. But like, this isn't the point to remember all these different names. Anyway, so between like sites and tables in Google and the auto-completion of the IDE, that's how I find things and remember stuff. So text view, there's some of the properties there. Not that much to do with a text view because it just sort of displays text, right? If you want a text view that has a long set of text in it, like you want it to be taller than the screen, or maybe it has more text than can fit in its area, there is a widget called a scroll view. So this is a little bit counterintuitive because you might have thought that maybe on the text view there would be some like Boolean setting like scroll bar equals true or something. That turns out that's not the way they decided to build it. The reason they didn't do it that way is, well, actually, maybe I'll ask you, why do you think, doesn't that seem like that would be reasonable to just say text view scroll equals true? Why don't they do that? Instead of that, what they do is they make you wrap it up in a separate widget called a scroll view that like contains it, and it has the scroll bar. Why do you think they would do that, make that separation like that? Seems like it's more for us to learn, so it's more complicated, right? So there must be some reason that they thought this was better or good.
There might be other widgets that you potentially want to put in the scroll view, like maybe an image or something like that.
Yeah, you said there might be other widgets, so maybe I have 4 different things, and that group of 4, I want all of that to scroll. Sure, and I think there's another general principle here, which is there's all kinds of different widgets, and I might want any of them to have scrolling. And if I make it so that the scrolling is implemented through like Boolean stuff here, that probably means that the code, like whoever implements this library, has to make this scrollable. And so every single widget, they have to write logic in there for scrolling or something. Whereas this, it's like you just implement scrolling once as like a container of scrolling, and then anything, even if you make your own custom kind of widgets, it'll know how to scroll too, because it's separated out in this way. This is an idea called a decorator design pattern. But anyway, so if you want something to scroll, you put a scroll view around it. And the scroll view, you don't have to add a lot of different properties to it, but you do want to usually set its size the same way that you would set the size of other widgets in your app. Okay. If you don't put it in a scroll view, then any extra contents will just fall off the bottom and you won't see them. So okay, let's talk about editing text. Bless you. TextView is not for typing in or editing text, it's just for displaying text. But if you do want typing, that's called EditText. And so I've listed more properties here because I think there's more stuff you might want to set. You can give an EditText an ID. You can set the initial text that's displayed in it. You can set the font size. You can set the maximum number of lines that you're allowed to type in the box. I think the default is just one. It's just a single line. But if you set it to 2 or 3, it's a multi-line input box. You can also set various types of input, like where it says input type equals type. Because a pretty common thing people run into is when you're asking the user to give input, you have to worry about if the user gives you bogus input or bad formatting or the wrong type of input. You say type your age, and they say no. They type NO in the box, and now that's not an int or whatever. So you say type your age, and you're expecting an int, and they type 39.7, which is roughly my age right now. So I want to round down. I don't want to round up. So they type something that's not the type that you expected. So by using this input type equals, you can say, well, I want them to type in a phone number or an integer or a string or something like that, and then that will help. It'll provide some kind of validation on the widget while they're typing. Or in some cases, I think it'll actually pop up a different input when they click on it as well. Let's play with that real quick. So if I go back here, I've just got kind of an empty thing to play with for now. So if I go back to the design view, if I go to text and I click, the confusing thing here is it doesn't say edit text here. It just says plain text. That's what you want. So it made an edit text there. Let me just attach that, and I want to try playing with it a little bit and run it and see what we can do with it. So there it is. Now, lately, it used to be the old way of doing UI was you'd put a label here that would say type your name, and then there would be a blank for them to type it. But the new hotness is that you put the little label of what you want them to type. You put that in the text editor itself as a gray little text that's there at the start, and that's called a hint in Android. So if you want to set what that is, you say hint, type your IQ here, and then that should. Wait, why didn't that show up? It's supposed to. Oh, it's because the text itself. So if there's no text typed, it'll hint, I want you to type your IQ here. So if you click on this, and then you say what input type you want, it has a whole bunch of different input types. So I think you say that you want a number, here, number, and then you say OK. And now let me just run that real quick, because I think it's interesting when you actually interact with it. When you're using your phone and you tap on a text entry, it usually pops up a little keyboard in the bottom, right? And so in this one, since I said I wanted it to be a number, I'm pretty sure that when I click on it, it'll pop up a little number pad. Yeah, see? It just popped only numbers because that's all I want them to type. So that makes it easier to make sure that they type the right thing in there. So I guess that also tells you, if you ever go to a mobile app and it says type your PIN number or whatever, and you press on that and it pops up a whole QWERTY keyboard, it means they set the input type wrong and they didn't code their app very well. They're not even as good as us, and we're only in week 2. Yeah, in the back.
Many apps, when we click enter, it just goes to the next thing. How do you do that on the number?
Okay. Well, yeah, if you want to make it so that you press enter and then it jumps to something, you can attach a keyboard, key press, listener, event handler thing to the widget. And then when enter gets pressed, you can react in a certain way. I'm going to show you how to do that, actually. I wasn't going to do it today, but I am going to talk a lot about event listeners, so I think we're going to get close to that today. Yeah, by default, I think if you press enter, so if I just, the thing is when you're running in the emulator, you can type numbers like my IQ is 87 or whatever. You can do that, or you can just type on your laptop keyboard. I think if I press enter, Right now it doesn't do anything, but I think you can set the text box to have max number of lines and it'll make the text box taller. Or if you want enter to jump to something, you can detect that with your own keyboard listener thing. Yeah, I'll show you how to do that. Anyway, there's a lot of different variations of input, like, and again, I think one of the best ways to discover them is to just look through, like I click here, input type number, I click over here, and it just lists a bunch of different things. And I mean, maybe there's not one that's exactly right for what you want, but if you say like text email address, I'm pretty sure it just, I don't think it doesn't like validate like that this is a working email or something, but what it does do is I think in the little keyboard on the bottom that pops up, it kind of makes sure that the @ sign is there. Have you ever noticed this? Like occasionally when you pop up your little keyboard, sometimes it has the row of the numbers showing and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it has like the period and the comma showing. Sometimes it has slash and @ showing. Like they have a little bit of variation to the keyboard based on what keys they think you want. And so I think telling it what you want them to type helps it to show the right keys to them or not. There's also ones like you can say you want a password, and I'm pretty sure if you say you want to text password, you can choose multiple ones. But if you choose password, I'm pretty sure that it stars it out, right? So that when they type whatever they type, it doesn't actually show the characters. I'm rerunning it just to verify that. If I type hello, HELLO, it does show it, but then it turns it into a dot afterward, right? So it does a little different behavior based on what kind of input type you say that you want. Okay. Okay. Any questions about that so far? Okay. Well, I want to talk about images for a second. Images are useful. You often want to display little icons, little pictures in your app, and if you want to display an image, that's called an image view. At least that's the sort of simplest way to display an image. And if you want to display an image, I'll walk you through the steps in a second, but you have to get some image files first of all, and you have to put them in your project in a certain folder, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. But then once you do that, you can create an image view, and you can tell it what image that you want it to display, and it'll put that image up on screen inside of it. So let me show that to you right now. I'm going to do this app with you guys a little bit today. That I want to make an app where you could choose what's your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. And I don't know whether people your age have even heard of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I don't care. This app is for me. I don't care if you guys get the references or not. I'm not doing Pokemon. I'm not doing Teen Titans Go or whatever you watch. So yeah, I'm going to do Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Anyway, I just wanted some images, right? And I have them in a folder here. Where is it? Uh-oh, did I lose it? In my 193 folder, under Lectures, Code, I have these TMNT images. So I got 4 pictures. I got Donatello, Leonardo, Michelangelo, and Raphael. I don't know why they have these little circles here. It's probably like a stock photo or something, but whatever. Anyway, I got 4 pictures, and I just want to do a little app. It's not really a very interesting app where it shows the turtles, but you could like pick a different turtle and it'll show their picture or something like that, okay? So if I want these pictures to be part of my app, I grab these files and I got to move them to the right place. Now, I think it's a little different for each kind of computer, like Mac or Windows or whatever, but I think your projects are typically stored in your home directory in a subdirectory called Android Studio Projects. On Mac, does it go in Documents or Library, or can somebody who has a Mac check this for me real quick? What is it?
It's Android Studio Projects too.
Is it just under your home directory / that? So it's not in Library or Documents? Or
that's when you create the project. If you download server code, it won't do that.
Right, so you could put it somewhere else, but kind of the default place it puts your projects is here. Yeah, so, I mean, yeah, you have some control over this if you want to put a project somewhere, or like you said, if you started with a starter code and you open it, maybe your project is located wherever you put it, or fine. But yeah, so anyway, the default for me is here, so I'm going to go in here and I've got a project called TMNT, and I think back on the first lecture, I sort of showed you all the different subdirectories that are in a project, but it could be a little hard to find your way through them. I think just if you want to have a little bit of an instinct about it, if things are called build, that usually means that when it compiles the project, it puts the output of binaries there. And if it says app, that's usually like the code for your app. Gradle is some sort of like make file stuff for like notes of how to compile, how to build, how to prepare the app. Anyway, if I go into app, there's more stuff in here. It can be a little hard to remember. I think in the slide here it says, where is it? Here, app source, main, res, drawable. Like that's where you need to go to put images. So I'm just trying to show you how to add images to your project. So if you go to app, source, main, res, and there's all these different ones, but then I choose drawable, and then in here I paste all these files. Now the app will like see them and I can use them. When you take this app and you install it on your phone or on your emulator or whatever, it sort of bundles up all the necessary files inside of the app, and so you don't have to worry about copying over those files, or is this phone or that phone going to have those files on it or not. Like if I put them in my project like this, they will be available to my code. So now that I put them here, if I go back to the project, I wanted to use the images, so I'm going to move these other widgets out of the way. And just here in the middle, let's just set up a way to look at these Ninja Turtle pictures. So I showed you on the slide that the widget in question is called an ImageView. So let's add one of those. So common ImageView. I'll drag it and drop it here. And the moment I drop it, it sort of wants to know like what resource are you going to use, what are you going to display. So you can set this now or you can hit cancel, but I think under project it has my images listed here. So it found them. You know, if you don't see your images here, you put them in the wrong place, basically. So let's choose Leonardo because he's the leader. So we'll say OK, and now it pops up. So you know, in ImageView, it's kind of similar to the other widgets. Like you can lay it out by attaching it to the other things on the screen. So I'll sort of center it, and right. So there he is. If I go to the XML, like I always want to see, like when I drag and drop stuff, what happens to the actual XML here. I've got an image view here, and most of the attributes of it are pretty familiar, but let me just press enter here so you can see all these. There, so it sets the source of the image to be TMNT Leo. Actually, it set the source compat. I don't know why it set source compat. That's interesting. Maybe they changed that in this version. See, in my slide it says you should set the source, but is it Android source? Yeah, see, that one works. So it's like, I don't know why, but the default it seemed was instead of setting Android source, which is what my slide says to do, yeah, it wants to set app:source compat. Wasn't that what it was? What was it? I lost it. Oh well. Source compat. I don't know. There's some weird stuff in Android where they change the names of some of the properties to different names so that they'll be more compatible with different versions of Android or whatever. But wait, what attribute is missing the? There, I don't know what's wrong with that. Okay, whatever. I set the source to be the Leo image. So one thing I haven't talked about very much is the format of these different strings. A lot of them were kind of sensible, things like, you know, the margin is 8 pixels, or this is the size of wrapping the content or whatever. But when you refer to certain things in your code, you write like an @ sign, and then a type, and then a slash, and then a name. So like this identifier here is you're saying, I want to refer to one of my drawable images whose name is TMNT Leo. And here you're saying, I want to give myself an ID of ImageView. And I think this one has a plus because, like, I don't know, IDs are special. They have those pluses in front of them. But anyway, that's how you tell it what image you want. Now, the reason it's called TMNT Leo is because that's what the file name was. Like, if I go back to the folder here, that file was called tmntleo.ping. So I think what that means is if I had a tmntleo.jpg also, I think those two would conflict with each other because it just looks at the prefix of the file name. I don't remember which one wins or if it's an error or what, but basically it just means you got to give your files unique name prefixes for it to work properly. So like another example of the editor helping me is if I don't remember the name of these files, if I just write drawable /, it should suggest all of the images. It just auto-completes which one do you want. It's even got a little picture of the image in the pop-up. It's pretty cool, huh? So I'll just set it to Leo. And it's underlining this. It's mad because it thinks this is a misspelled word. It thinks this is a typo, like not a code error. It thinks it's a misspelled word. I think it's a spurious error. Oh well. So now I got this image. That's pretty much all that an image view can do. There are a few other properties you might want to set, like there's scaling. Sometimes, I mean, frankly, what I did here was I made these images be at a natural size so they would look kind of okay on a standard size phone, but you might want to have a really small or really big image that you sort of stretch to fit the available space. And it doesn't always do what you would expect. Like if I set the width of this image view, see the blue box? That's like the size this thing is taking up in the emulator. If I set it to match parent or match constraint or whatever, wait, I thought it was going to say match constraint. Hang on, let me put it to wrap content there. So if I go back to the, where is it, the editor here, if I try to make this wider, like match the constraints, it gets wider, but did you see Leo didn't get any bigger? Like the little picture of him didn't get any bigger. So you might want to use this scale type attribute over here. It just tells it like, should I zoom the image to fit the pixels of the image to fit? So if I say fit XY, did you see how he got wider there? Or if I say center, he just centers himself. Or if I say fit start, he moves to the left. And if I say fit end, he moves to the right. So you can kind of change how you want that to look. I'll just say none. Just leave it at its original size. But sometimes that matters. Sometimes that's something that you want, the images to scale. Now, if I wanted this app to allow me to, pick a different turtle and see a different turtle's picture, there's lots of different ways you could do that. Now, I don't really think this is a UI class, HCI class, a design class, something like that. But there's lots of different ways you could ask the user, what turtle do you want to display here, right? So one way we could do that would be here up, we have this editing text box, right? So instead of saying type your IQ, we could say type a turtle, and then we could wait for them to type what turtle they want, and then we could display that turtle. That's something we could do. What do you think of this user interface?
Not great.
What's that?
It's not great.
It's not great? You have a gift for understatement. Okay, I agree, but humor me. What's bad about it? What do you think would be better than that?
So we only have 4 specific turtles, so there's only 4 inputs that they can put in, but you're giving them unlimited range here, so they can type in anything they want. So
yeah, it's I'm letting the user have too much freedom. I think Apple really helped teach people this principle that, like, if you don't want users to screw up, just don't give them very many choices, right? And that goes all the way through their thought process. Like when you go to buy a Mac, they don't have 87 different ones. They got like 3, right? So it's like you can probably pick the one you want from 3. But if you go to like Dell, there's like 87 different Dells, and you don't even know which one is the good one, and you get overwhelmed and you don't know which one to pick. So all the way down to when you're using most apps for a Mac or for an iPhone, not every single one, but a lot of them, they give you a few options, but they don't give you a ton of options. And when they do give you an option, they really try to give you a constrained UI so you wouldn't put in something that's invalid, right? So, maybe this is an obvious thing to say, but I'm just pointing it out. Like, letting them type in whatever turtle they want isn't really good UI because we don't have this database of many turtles we could show. We have 4 exact turtles, so we should present those 4. We should make it clear that those are what the choices are and let them pick them, and preferably not by typing it in either. I mean, I could say type a turtle, parentheses. The valid choices are Leo, Mike, Don, and Raph. But even that's no good, even though we told them what the choices are, because users don't really like to type unless they have to. We shouldn't make them type when we could just present the 4 options in an easier way, right? So let's learn at some more widgets that maybe we could use to pick it more easily. Wait, where is it? I'll come back to that. Here. So we have checkboxes. Checkboxes are for like on-off switches. You can turn things on and off. You can put one on the screen and put text next to it. You can set whether it's checked or not. You can also set an on-click function that should be called when they check it or when they uncheck it. So that's, I think, fairly simple. If you're interacting with the widget in code, in Kotlin code, you can refer to all these things. You can say checked or text or whatever to interact with the widget. You can set the check to be true or false to turn it on and off from within the code, or if you just want to flip it to the opposite of what it is, there's a method called toggle you can use. So not too complicated. I don't think checkboxes would work very well. We could put the 4 turtles in checkboxes, right? Checkbox for Leo, check for Michelangelo. What's wrong with that UI? What?
You only want one.
I only want one, right? So the turtles are mutually exclusive. You only want one on the screen at a time. Checkboxes are not usually mutually exclusive. If you have 4 checkboxes, you could check one of them or all of them or none of them. I think the example you use for that a lot is like if you're ordering food, you're ordering your burrito and Chipotle or whatever. You know, when you're listing the proteins, usually you only want one. You either want beef or chicken or tofu or that disgusting stuff, the seitan stuff that they have, that pretends to be meat, or none. You want one of those choices, but not more than one for the meat. But then for the toppings and stuff, you say, I want lettuce, I want cheese, I want beans. You wouldn't just pick one of those. You'd check box as many of them as you want. So check boxes for the veggies and not check boxes for the protein. So if you want other options for like kind of on-off switches, you can do a switch. A switch is sort of a little bit just different skin of a checkbox. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. It's just like you've seen apps that have these. It's basically just an on-off switch. It's basically just a checkbox that has a little different look to it. Or if you write the CS198 paperless software, it's used for tab switching, which doesn't make any sense, but whatever. So that's a switch. It pretty much acts like a checkbox. The one I want to get to is a radio button. That's more used if you have mutually exclusive choices. You want to let the user pick one, exactly one of them, right? So it has pretty similar attributes. You can make it checked or not. You can make it clickable or not. You can disable it. You can set an on-click function. You can set the text. If you want to make them mutually exclusive, you actually have to use another thing called a radio group that I'll show you in a second. So let me just show you radio buttons for the turtles, and let's see why it doesn't work right away. So if I make a radio button, and I grab and I drop it here. So for this one, I'll have the text be Leo, and I'll grab another radio button and I'll drop it. Oops. And I'll move it over a little bit, and this one will be for Michelangelo, and I'll grab another one. This one will be for Donatello, and one more for Raphael. Okay, so you can make these 4 radio buttons for the 4 turtles. I guess I could run this. So like for, let's say initially selected as Leo, so checked, I'll put yes, I'll set the checked property to true, so he's checked. I guess I gotta like position these, you go underneath him, dock to the bottom, and then you dock to him, and you dock to him, and you dock to him, and I think I have to connect these guys to him too, or else they'll get lost. There, and you dock to him. Okay, and then this, I think that's okay. Okay, whatever. So I just set those up like that. Let me run it real fast because I want to make sure you see why that's just not quite enough. It's pretty close, but I mean, basically what's going to happen, I think, is that it will not make the buttons be mutually exclusive from each other. I think it'll allow me to check 2 of them. Let me try. Yeah, see, so it didn't separate them. The reason is because, you could imagine a user interface where you had multiple different groups of radio buttons. These 2 are mutually exclusive, and these 4 are mutually exclusive, but maybe they're not all mutually exclusive with all the other ones. So to indicate which ones are allowed to share and which ones are not allowed to share, which ones are related to each other, they have this like container that you're supposed to put them in that's called a radio group. So a radio group is also available on the widget palette here. So if I grab a radio group and I drag it and drop it, the best way that I've found to do this is, so a radio group doesn't really look like anything. It's not really a widget. It's more of a container. Over here on the left side, what I found is that if you drag and drop the buttons in the group, it'll sort of add them to the group. You go in there, and you go in there, and you go in there. Do you notice how it's like indenting them to indicate that they're inside of the group there? And so I think if you look at the XML, what I'm going to find in here is like inside of my overall constraint layout. I've got most of the other widgets just right in there. But then down here, I have a RadioGroup that contains the 4 buttons inside of it. And so that's how it knows that those 4 are connected to each other, and only one of those 4 should be clickable at a time. I think I've got some kind of issue with, okay, view is not constrained. So the reason the view is not constrained is because the group itself I didn't attach to anything. So let's attach him here, and let's attach over here, and let's attach over here. So now it kind of scrolls them vertically like this. If you want them horizontal, I think if I click on the group, over here somewhere, there's like an orientation, orientation horizontal. So now they lay out like that, right? So now that I've made that change, if I rerun the app, it won't look much different, because the RadioGroup doesn't have a visual appearance to it. But I believe if I click here, look, it unchecks the previous one when I check a new one, okay? So you probably almost always want radio buttons to be in a RadioGroup for them to work properly. However, when I'm clicking on these guys, it doesn't do anything. So let's make it so that it does do something. How do I do that? You know this, right? How do you make it do stuff when you,
Put a listener in the Kotlin code.
Yeah, well, let's write a listener in the Kotlin code. So over here, this is my Kotlin. I didn't do anything here. It's underlining this in green because it thinks TMNT is misspelled. It doesn't understand. But we learned you write a function called, whatever, radio button click, and you have to take a view parameter of type view. So now that you have that function, and it's red, so if it's red, you hit Alt-Enter, and it imports view. Okay, so now that I have that function, you go back to your XML, and you say, hey, radio button, when you get clicked, where's onClick? Does it have that? Oh, it might not be listed in the short list here, so if I go to the entire list, if I scroll down to onClick, I can say radio button click. So I can do that for all 4. Now I'm going to show you a style here that I think works well. You can set the same on-click handler for all 4 of the function of the radio buttons. So all 4 of them call that function when they get clicked on. But if they're all using the same function, well then how do I know what to do in this function's code? Like this will get called. I know one of the radio buttons got clicked on. How do I know which one? Yeah?
It's the different view being passed in.
Yeah, this here is a parameter that's an object that refers to the button that was clicked. So I forget if you can go like if view equals. So now this is where like if I want to refer to the 4 buttons, this is where you want to go back and put good ID labels on them, right? I think when I was editing the XML here, I don't think I really set the IDs. I set the text to say Leo, Mike, Don, Raph. But I probably want this to say like, radio button _ Leo or something like that. And then here for this one, I'll set this one to be radio button Mike. And then for this one, I'll set this to be radio button Don. And for this one, I'll set radio button Ref, right? So now back in the TMNT code, I don't know if I can say if this equals radio button _ Leo. Does that work? I guess it does. Okay, so basically I can just, based on what that view is, that tells me which one it was clicked on. So I can, I can react. Another way you can say this is you could say if the view that got clicked on has an ID that's equal to r.id.rb _ Leo, that's also a way of saying that same thing. Like if the view that got clicked on has an ID of this ID, then I know it's the Leonardo radio button, okay? But I actually think that one we had before was maybe easier, so let's do if view equals RB Leo. So now we basically want to set what image is being displayed on the screen. If you want to set what image is being displayed, the way that you do that is there's a method of the ImageView object that you can run in Kotlin called setImageResource. So I have to say, I don't like when the XML is different than the Kotlin. To me, it makes a ton of sense if you go over here and in the XML you have some, attribute like, text, and it's set to Leo. And it's like, okay, well now in the Kotlin code, if I get a reference to this widget, I can say dot text. It's the same name, and it'll be that string, and it'll be Leo. Like, that makes sense. The same name in the two places makes sense. But there are a few of these attributes that when you go to the Kotlin, for whatever reason, they don't name it exactly the same in the Kotlin as they name it in the XML. And like, again, that might be a place where you have to Google, like, how do I set the blank attribute of an image view in the Kotlin code? And you'll find a Stack Overflow example. So one such example, like the place where we set what image we are displaying, that was here, where we set this src, source property, right? And we set it to @drawable/TMNT Leo. So you could imagine that maybe over here in the Kotlin code, you would say like, we have to give an ID to this thing, right? It's called ID/ImageView. Let's call it turtle. So now in the Kotlin code, you could imagine maybe that you would say like turtle.src equals, you know what I mean? And you would be setting the source just the same way that over here you set the source. But for whatever reason, it doesn't let you do that. That's not how you say it. If you want to set the source of the image, you instead have to say dot set image resource. And now the value that you pass as a parameter here is the ID of the image that you want to use. Now you might say, what do you mean the ID? Well, so remember the images that we're using here are like TMNT, Don, Leo, whatever, .ping. So I would imagine like if you're coming from Java or C++, you'd sort of want to put like TMNT Leo.ping. You'd want to sort of put that file name here, right? But that's not the way that it does it. It doesn't want the file name as a string. It wants the resource ID of this. And where you get resource IDs from, they're technically integers. The way that you refer to them is you write R for resource, dot, and then you write the type of resource, and images are called drawable resources, and then dot, and then the image name. Now a bunch of stuff is auto-completing because that's default stuff, but I want TMNT Leo. And the reason it's called TMNT Leo is because of the file name. It was tmntleo.ping. So like that's how to tell it to use that image. So you would do the same thing for each of the four, 1, 2, 3, 4. You'd say if the view is Michelangelo, set this to be TMNT Mike. You'd say if the view that got clicked on was Donatello, set the image to TMNT Don. And then if this is Raf, you'd say set this to TMNT Raf. Okay? Now of course we're going to get a good grade for style, so we'll say else if, we'll say else if, we'll say else if. There. So that's the way to make the same event handler run on all four of the different radio buttons. Okay? Let me click on this and make sure that it works real fast. So set image resource. And again, if it's confusing like turtle, that variable is using that magical Kotlin extension. You can refer to a widget by writing its ID as though that ID were a variable name, and it'll understand that in Kotlin in Android. So if I click, why are these up here? I better check that in a second. But if I click Mike, hey, it switched to Mike. I click Don, it switches to Don. So I'm able to pick my cool turtles here, right? Does that make sense? Do you guys have a question about that? Yeah?
So why are you able to override what you hard coded in XML? Like, is it not constantly updating?
Oh, the fact that the XML says Leo, but then I'm changing it. Well, I would look at it this way. The XML is like the initially declared state of the app when it first loads up. But then all of that state is subject to change while the app is running. So like you could set the initial text of a text box, but then later you can change that to new text if you want. So all the stuff in the XML, like honestly what Android really does is when it's like loading up your app, it like reads the XML and uses it in Kotlin to like set text, set size, set color, set. It uses that stuff, set, display, go. And now from there, all the event handling runs, you know, so all of that is subject to be changed while the code is on the screen. Yeah. Any other questions? I guess I wasn't really sure why the radio buttons were appearing there on the screen. Did anybody see? So I guess, wait, they're up there now. I don't want them up there. I want the top of View to be attached to the bottom of View. There, maybe, I don't know why that happened. Maybe I misclicked or something, so. Okay, so that's radio buttons, radio button groups, event handlers. Oh, I wanted to show you, you know, I'm kind of going out of my way not to teach you every little feature of Kotlin. I think this code is fine. There's nothing wrong with this code. But you will sometimes see the editor underline your code. And that's the editor trying to like hint to you, maybe there's like a better way of writing this same statement. So if you want to look at that, that's fine. In this case, it's saying cascading if could be replaced with when statement. So how many of you have used a switch statement before? Switch statement is kind of like a condensed version of an if-else, 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 where if all the ifs and elses are all checking the value of a specific variable, like we're all checking if the view is this, or if the view is that, or if the view is that. If all the branches are checking the same variable's value like that, you can use this switch statement where you say, based on this variable, if it's this value, do that. If it's this value, do that. It's a little more condensed version of if-else. So Kotlin has a thing that's like switch, but it's called a when statement. So again, I'm not going to you don't need that to write code, but like if you go over here, there's a light bulb, and I click it, it says replace if with when. It goes, okay, when the view is Leo, do that. If the view, it's basically like a shorthand of the same thing. I think the syntax is weird, but sort of self-explanatory, right? So when is like, when the value of this variable is this, do that. When it's this, do that. When it's this, do that. So like, yeah, my slides on Kotlin don't have the when statement, but if you're into that, that's fine. In fact, I was testing it earlier, because what I was curious about was like, well, I hate having to rewrite set image resource every time. You know, because like if you're really trying to like remove redundancy, you know, like there's this little bit of text that gets repeated 4 times. So I thought, well, really what I'm doing is I'm turning this into this. So could I like do that somehow? So you can do something. I tried this earlier and I was shocked that it worked. You can do like val id equals when view. So I remove this. I think I have to say else here. So, okay, there. So val id equals that, and then I can say set image resource to id. So, can you even read this anymore? What it's saying is make a variable named id, and its value should be dependent on what view I got clicked on. So if view is Leo, set id to rdrawable Leo. If view is Mike, set id to rdrawable Mike. And then whatever it has been set to, set the image resource to use that ID. So I don't know. I was just trying to show you like there's different ways of doing stuff in Kotlin. I guess that's a little cleaner than the if-else version. I mostly showed it to you for 2 reasons. One is because the editor will underline your code. And I know a lot of you guys when you're coding, you're like, my editor is underlining it. It's bad. I got to fix it. So I wanted to explain why it would underline that and what it wanted you to write instead. The other reason was because maybe if you're Googling, you see this sort of thing, and then you're like, what the hell is that? Marty never showed me when this or that. I don't know what that means. So I just wanted to mention it. But like in terms of our class, our coding style and grading, you don't have to use this stuff if you don't want to. Somebody had their hand up. Yes, sir.
If you change the IDs of the radio buttons to the file name prefixes, and then just say like ID is equal to r.drawable plus the ID, would it still work?
Okay, that's an interesting question. So it's like, if you named these to be the right string, then could you just not do some of this? Sort of, yeah. There's on the slide here, where is it? I've got an example here. So I already showed you that. Here, so if you want to, basically what you want is to take like a string or something and turn it into an ID. So you can use like resources.getIdentifier, and you can, there's a way of doing that. And I think I'm going to not do that in class here, but I think it would be more useful if you had like 57 different turtles and you didn't want to type out a 57-way if, else, or when statement. You could sort of say, grab the ID, convert it to a string, use the string to look up this, load the image from this. Yeah, you could use it more like a lookup table that way. And I think I'll do a lecture example later in the course where I do that exact idea. Yeah. Another question, yeah?
When you change the IDs, like, is there externally some sort of loop that's like checking when IDs are changed to update? Or?
Well, so if you call setImageResource, it has some sort of internal listing of this ID is this picture and that ID is that picture. So if I call this, it uses that ID to look up the picture, and then it paints those pixels onto the widget on the screen. So, I mean, it has some sort of internal lookup structure of IDs that map to images. If I just wrote in some bogus number here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something, I don't know if it would compile, but it certainly wouldn't find any image located there. I'm not changing IDs in the sense of like the IDs and what they map to are always the same, but I'm just telling it which I'm using. These are like a way of referring to things that are resources that are bundled into the app that I compile. So I'm telling it how to, which one I want it to look up, basically. Okay. Any other questions so far? Most of these widgets are fairly simple. I mean, I think what happens is it's a little bit opaque until you go play with it for a few minutes. And once you've done one little app or demo or exercise with one of these widgets in it, you sort of get the hang of that widget and you sort of feel comfortable with it. I talked about checkboxes and radio buttons. Oh, there is one I wanted to show. There's a widget called an ImageButton. It's basically the same as an ImageView, except it's technically also a button. So you can make it clickable so that when you tap on the image, it'll run a function. Whereas like the ImageView is not meant to be clickable. The code I have so far, if you like tap on the turtle, it won't do anything. But if you switch from ImageView, in fact, I think in the code here, all I have to do is just go to my XML, and where it says ImageView here, just change it to say ImageButton. I think that's all I need to do. And now he's clickable. I don't know, we could set an on-click or whatever. I didn't do that part, but that's useful if you want like, you know, you want to be able to click the turtle to like learn more about him or something like that. So I already showed you some of these widgets like checkboxes and radio buttons. Where am I? So I did want to mention, like, most of the widgets I just showed you were pretty simple, but there is one widget that's a little more complicated, and that's a list widget. So I actually have a separate couple of slides about lists. I'm going to show you most of that today. We'll see if I finish it today, but list is one that's just like a little bit more complicated than some of the other ones. That's why I kind of separated it out. So I'm going to jump to some slides that I have that are about lists. And you know, when I hear the word lists, I think of like a collection, a data structure, like a vector, array list, or something like that. That's kind of the right idea, but a list view is, it's small up there, but it's just a usually vertical collection of choices that the person can either look at or click on or something like that, right? I guess the reason that this has its own set of slides and its own separate discussion is that it's kind of harder to specify what the choices are and how do you click on them and what does it do when you click on them. There's just a little bit more to it is all. So imagine if I wanted to make it so there's a list of turtles. So I mean, I already have the radio buttons for the turtles, but if I wanted there to also be just a list of them here, you know, that you could click on, I could grab, see, actually I don't know where lists are in here. Layouts, containers, Google. Oh, ad view. Cool, I can put an ad in the bottom of my app. That's the sort of thing I would do. Legacy, list view. So if you grab a list view and you drop it here, so let me like attach this to stuff here. You're attached there, and you're attached to there. To null, no. There. Did that work? Hold on, attached there. I can't tell if it's attaching or not. Come on. Attached to there. Okay, I think I got it. So now I have a list here, list of items, And if you want to set what the items are, you would think you would just go over here and type them in or something like that, or maybe you'd go to the XML and type them in, but no. The people who made Android development, they hate you, and so that is not how you do it. So you have to set this thing called entries, but you have to set it to an array, and then I have to teach you how to create an array in a file called strings.xml because it's all very stupid. So let me just show you some of it. I'll show you. Where is it? So there's two kind of lists. One is that you know ahead of time what the items are, and so you just write them down and you display them. The other is called a dynamic list. Is maybe you don't know what the items are until the app is running. Maybe you download them from an internet site while the app is loaded, and then you display them or something like that. So the way you do that is just different. The two approaches are very different. Let's do a static list first. So if you want a static list, you have to edit this file called strings.xml. This is really janky. It's almost like you're declaring variables or something that your layout is going to use, but you have to declare them using XML rather than Kotlin. And so you go into this strings.xml file, you can create strings in here, you can also create string arrays with a given name, and then declare each individual string as an item. Once you've made this array, you can tell your ListView to use this as its set of items. Now, I think it's really dumb that they separated these two things. I don't know why they don't just have you declare them in the layout XML file, but whatever. So let me show you. So if I want this list to contain, I don't know, 2 or 3 different Ninja Turtle characters, if you go over to your app and you open up the different areas of the app, the res area has a values folder, and there's a file in there called strings.xml. So if I double click that, there's only one thing in here, which is the app's name of TMNT. If you make a new thing here and you write string array, and the name of this might be like, I don't know, characters, Ninja Turtle characters. Now inside here, you put some items like Splinter, Master Splinter is a character, Shredder is a character, Krang is a character, whatever. You probably don't even know this TV show, so I'll just stop there. So you name characters or whatever things you want. Now this is like an array that I can refer to, and it's got a variable name of characters. So if I go back to the layout and I say, hey list, your entries should come from the array called characters, @array/characters. And now I don't know if it'll update itself to show that. I thought it would. Let me just run this so I can see if I see it on the screen. So I think when it pops up, it should have those characters that I wrote down, like Shredder and Splinter and kind of all that stuff. Let's see. Yes, Splinter, Shredder, Krang, Bebop. So that's how to make a list. I think it's a little bit dumb because you have to go to that other file to do it, right? But it gets better, right? And that is when you want to do it more dynamically. Another thing that gets better about lists is when you want to make it so that you can interact with a list, so you can click on the items of a list. That's also crappy. So I'm going to try to show you one or both of those things during the time that we have left. Yeah?
So the list view is under legacy. Does that mean it's old? Is there like a new version of it maybe?
Yeah, I didn't know that ListView was like not cool anymore. I'm going to have to go look. There's a new thing called Recycler View that I think some apps want to use, but let me get back to you. I was not aware that was not cool anymore either, because I find ListView by just typing it over here.
Yeah.
So seeing that they organize it that way, I do agree with you that it sort of implies that like there's something better now. But I'll tell you this, there's still a ton of these in the wild. Like most apps that show lists of stuff are using this. So, I do think we want to play with it still. I mean, when I look here, look, they wrote Recycler View. Didn't I say that a second ago? That's probably a slightly newer one. But my guess is this thing's even crappier than ListView. Because, usually, here's my emotional cycle dealing with Android. I'll discover some feature of Android that sucks, that I don't like to develop, because it's hard to use or whatever. That's, I'm at a low point. Then I'll hear Google's going to replace that with a new thing. So then I'll get really excited. Then the new thing will come out and I'll go look it up. And it's just as bad as the old one, but now it has more bad stuff that you have to learn. So it's like this constantly, like, fool me once, shame on you type of cycle with this stuff. But Anyway, I've got a list of items. So let me show you a couple things while we have time. I want to show you how could I make it so I could tap on the items. And I want to show you how could I make it so that the list of items might change over time or might be more dynamic, okay? So let's do the clicking first. So the clicking, now, this is one of those things where, like, you guys, hopefully you've been paying attention, you've learned some stuff about Android already, so you're probably like, okay, I just say on click, I tell it what function, and then when I click on the list, it'll call that function, right? Because that would make a lot of sense if that was how to do it. Well, no, that's not how it works because Android hates you. So what you need to do instead is, wait, let me find it. Handling list events. They don't use the on-click event. You have to write and attach the event handling function all in Kotlin. So remember, the way we've been doing events so far is you tell it what the function is that should be called when it gets clicked. You tell it that in the XML. And then the content of that function you write as Kotlin code. Well, no, for lists, everything's Kotlin, all Kotlin. And let me just show you how it works. The way that you would, wait, that's Java. Wait, why do I still have Java on this slide? Hang on. So the way you do this is you give the list a descriptive ID. So I'll call it like a character list or something, I guess. Now, in the Kotlin code, when the app is being created, that's this onCreate function, you refer to that list. You say, what did I call it? Character list dot set on item click listener. And now in these parentheses, you pass the function that you want it to call. So like if I were to write an appropriate function, I could write that function's name here. But the way they want you to do this is they want you to write these brackets. And in these brackets, it's going to contain the code that you want it to run. And I find this a little confusing, but this syntax is something called a lambda function. It's also called an anonymous function. So like between these braces, I'm writing a function, but I'm not actually going to give it a name. So I'm writing a function, I'm passing that function as a parameter here, and then it will notify the app that that's the function I want to run when you click on the items of this list. So like I think if I just wrote here and said like toast, bless you, toast.makeText, you know, this, comma, hello, comma, toast.lengthShort dot show. So like if I told it to display a toast here, I think that's mostly what it needs to be. But the one problem is that this anonymous function, it wants it to accept 4 parameters. It wants it to accept an adapter and a view and an integer and a long integer. And I believe those 4 parameters are the list, the item, the index, and something. And I don't remember what they are. So here's something funny. The way to specify parameters for this, because basically, sorry, let me make more clear what I'm doing. This bracket thing that I wrote, I just copied it and pasted it down here. Imagine if I wrote fun foo like that, right? It's a void function, takes no parameters, returns nothing. It's almost like if I wrote set listener to be foo. Does that make sense? But I just wrote the code of foo up there. And I didn't even give it a name of foo. I just said, run this code, do this. Okay? That's kind of what I was just doing a second ago. So it's an anonymous function. Okay? But then the thing is, they want me to declare like these 4 parameters in here for the anonymous function. And the way that you describe parameters for anonymous function is you either give them names like you say like x is an int or whatever, you describe them here. Or if you just don't even really need the parameters, you can just say something and something and something and something, and then I'll give you this as the result. So like those 4 underscores mean 4 parameters that I don't care about. And then this arrow is like, here's what I will do with those 4 parameters. So I am pretty sure that that's going to work, so let me go run that and let's see if it actually works. If that works successfully, then when I tap on the different items, it should say hello when I tap on there. So let me try that. Tap. Hello. See that? It worked. So, I mean, I don't think that's that bad. I mean, I'll tell you this. If this seems weird and bad and you hate me right now, I will say that up till this offering of the course, we did Java. And if you wanted to do it in Java, it looked like this. Button find view by ID dot set on click listener new view dot on click listener parenthesis bracket public void on click view v bracket code bracket parenthesis semicolon. So I guess like it can be even worse than this. This is the Java version. Question?
How do you access, like, let's say the text or the ID of the one that was clicked, the member of the list that was clicked?
Right, so how do you know, like I just made it say hello. That's not very useful because I want to know which one they tapped on, right? So the 4 actual parameters that it wants are the list itself, the item, the index, I believe, and then I'm trying to remember what the 4th one is. I think it's the ID question mark. So I think what you can do is you can say you clicked item $index with ID $ID. I think that is going to work. Let me double check that. I might have the order of the item and the index and the ID backwards, but I'm pretty sure that's right. So of course that would give us enough information that we could disambiguate the two. So let's see. If I touch Splinter, you clicked item 0 with ID 0. You clicked item 1 with ID 1. Huh, I don't know why they have the same. I'm surprised they have the same one. But the other thing is the item itself. I'm pretty sure if I say item dot text, like I can refer to that. That item refers to that element of the list, so I can ask it questions about itself as well. So that's kind of how you make it do something when you click on a list. Kind of weird, right? So I guess I could do something like, if this list had the same characters, like let me sort of use a list to do the same stuff that the radio buttons were doing, so that you can see the difference. So here's Leo, Mike, Don, and Raf. So over here, I guess what I would do is I would say instead of this, I would say I do something like this here, but I would say I'd say when index, if you clicked on index 0, I want Leo, 1, I want Mike, 2, I want Don, and else I want Raf, and then set the image to do that. So it's underlining some of these ones over here because it's like you didn't use this, so you should just put an underscore. You didn't use this, just put an underscore. So it's like I only want the 3rd parameter, which is the index, so I give it a name. So I think that now when I tap on those, it'll make the appropriate turtle pop up on the image view now. Let's try it. Tap Don. Hey, look, it works. So, of course, now I have, if I really did want to support both of these, right, when I tap Don, not only should it make Don appear, but what else should it do? Like if this dumb app really is supposed to have this as its UI. Yeah, what's missing?
Change the button to Dawn.
Yeah, I should make the Dawn button like turn checked, right? So, I mean, that's not impossible. I would just need to like add some code here and say whatever I called that radio button dot checked true. I could do that. I just haven't. I don't think I will because of time purposes. But like, if you really wanted your UI to be consistent, you'd want to do something like that. Now, asterisk, you probably wouldn't make a UI like this, so it's a little bit of a stupid thing to worry about. But yeah.
Is there an easy way to turn the list into a drop-down menu?
Yeah, actually there is. I was going to show you that as well, because sometimes, so some lists drop down. They normally show one item, but when you tap it, it opens up and shows all of them, right? So I think just, again, I'm not really trying to teach you good UI and, as you can tell, and how to like make an awesome, beautiful UI, but like, how do you know if you want a drop-down list versus if you want all of them to appear like this? What do you guys think? Like, what would cause you to pick one of those widgets over the other?
Have a very long list of ones to drop.
If it's really long, you probably can't fit it on the screen, so you might want to drop it down. Right. Another reason might be just you don't use it that often, so you don't want it to eat up a lot of screen space, so you make it drop down. Yeah, something like that. So if you do want the turtles to drop down here, the way that you do that is, it's in the slide here, instead of using a list view like we've done here, you use a different widget called a spinner. And I believe all I have to do is just edit the XML and change list view to spinner, and I think it'll work then. The only other difference is I think I wrote, for the list, I wrote set on item clicked listener, but I think for a spinner you have to say set on item selected listener. I can't even tell you how many students' app didn't work because they used the wrong listener. It's unfortunate. But like, yeah, we can try that real quick. So in the XML text, instead of list view, we say spinner. And now you can kind of see it dropping down there. So if I go back to the design view here, let's unattach it from the bottom there because it's too big. Did it do it? Delete it. Come on. I never know how to, it's like, it says delete bottom constraint, right? So I click it and it doesn't do it. Come on, man. Okay, wait, so now over here, how do I constrain the bottom? I'll delete that one, okay. Did that do it? Wait. There, maybe? Okay, whatever. So if I run that again, it should be a drop-down menu. But I think I'm going to put it back. After all that work, I think I'm going to put it back. But there. But that's how you do a drop-down list. You make it into a spinner first. Okay, so the last thing that I think maybe I'll just save this for next time is, what if you want the contents of the list to change? Like in response to something you click or in response to something you type or whatever, you want a new item to be added to the list. Unfortunately, that's not as easy as you'd like. You have to learn about something called a list adapter. I'll show you at the start of the next class how to do that. So we'll stop there for now. Remember, sections are today and tomorrow. If you're in the section today, make sure you know the room, make sure you know the time. If you don't know or you need any help with your section, come on up and me and the CAs will help you out. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys on Thursday. Thanks.
Hey, Marty, can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
What would cause like something for like it to like the emulator to behave differently than like my code here? So like say my button here is like aligned in the center, but like in the emulator it's always like opposite.
Oh, okay. So the reason for that is because in the visual editor, when you just drag and drop stuff, it allows you to just put something anywhere as like a temporary holding spot, but it doesn't actually make it be there unless you anchor it to stuff.
Okay.
So what probably is happening here is you probably need to click on the, like, anchor the edges of this to something. It looks like you did. Yeah, that looks pretty good. But so maybe what's happening is maybe you have explicitly set some sort of margin or number, because I see this thing that says like 138 or something. So I'm kind of wondering if you set a margin. Like if you click on that button, so you have like margin start, margin end. I might delete it. If you just delete those, if you take the edges and attach them, and then you have the button's width and height to be just normal, it'll automatically center it because it'll automatically set it'll be pulling from both sides. So I think it's those margins that's causing it.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hi.
Two quick questions.
Yeah.
First, where is the section today going to be?
The one today. Sorry. Let me pause the video.